Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be making a video on a beginner's guide to finding right tags or, essentially income producing tags on Redbubble. I know we talk about Redbubble a lot, and you guys could probably see hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel on Redbubble tags. You could probably even see the tagging courses on or the tag course, not the tagging courses, but the tag course on my YouTube, on my website for $40. But today it's not about that. It's not about the paid course. It's not about the design course. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about a beginner's guide. That's really what I'm going to say. A beginner's guide. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things I could say for beginners, but I'm taking into consideration the people who are maybe just getting into this. If you're a month in, 5 months in, heck, even a year in, it's very likely that you're probably a beginner. And there's actually no shame in that, by the way. I just want to put that out there. I think some people take that as an insult if they're beginner, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, the best place to start is from the bottom because you can't go down any further, right? And like I said, I know that sounds harsh. I know that might sound bad, but really just feel empowered to really just be in the moment right now and get started working on your Redbubble business. I want to stress here, guys, that with Redbubble, the more experience you gain is not how long you've been on the platform. There are people who've been on the platform for 2 months that have much more experience than people who've been on it for years. It's just a matter of going out there and producing work and learning the ropes on Redbubble. And I'm telling you, there's so many people that just give up way too early. So without further ado, my little encouragement speech, get that out of the way. Just to top it off, put the cherry on top, I want to say to you guys, don't quit, keep moving forward, and keep learning, right? And keep producing work. At the end of the day, I know this is not like a hustle culture kind of thing or kind of video, but the more you work at this, the better you're going to get. And I know sometimes you might not see results right away, but if you're a beginner, you don't have that extra money to spend on something like a paid course or something like that, don't worry. You could still gain success. At the end of the day, when I first started this Redbubble stuff, I didn't sign up to any paid courses. I just had to figure it out. Now, you guys probably know my story with the whole, success on Redbubble and how I have over 17 stores and how I set up the sales and how I basically 10x my store in a single month. And I did all that. You guys probably know about that already because you've seen my YouTube channel. But today, like I said, this is just strictly like a small beginner's guide. Like, I guess you could say a few tips for beginners. So first thing I want you guys to think of is I want you to think of how people are finding products on Redbubble. Okay, so there's a few scenarios, right? You have the first scenario, which people are just doing a Google search and they're finding a product. It doesn't even have to be just Google, but any search engine, right? Like sometimes we get caught up just on Google, but there's a lot of search engines that exist. You have Bing, you have Yahoo, you have Google, and a few others, right? Actually, you have a lot of other search engines, but probably too many to mention, right? Most people use Google. And they find the product and they end up seeing that product, whether they go and they find similar products or they purchase that product, or maybe they don't purchase at all. But either way, they're in the funnel now. And if you're a beginner, you don't know what the word funnel means in a marketing sense, it's perfectly fine. All it just generally means is you're now in the life cycle of the sales process, right? You're going to be advertised to. You're going to see more products that relate on different websites through ads and things like that. So you're in the funnel, right? So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is when there's a person or consumer who is a very, like, I guess you could say, a committed individual to Redbubble as a brand. They consistently go on Redbubble and they use the Redbubble search function to find products. Like, I'll give you an example. I love wolves, so I might type a picture of a wolf, or I might type a picture of a tiger, right? And I might search for tiger, and I might buy something. If I'm consistently on Redbubble, and I know about Redbubble, I know Redbubble exists as a consumer, then I'm going to do that frequently, right? It's almost like me personally. If I like, for example, Nike.com. I use this example a lot because I like Nike.com. But Nike.com, I like their products. I like their hoodies. I like their hats. I like their sneakers. I like everything they sell. I'm going to go frequently on Nike.com and search for specific products, right? Now, obviously, the mechanics are a little bit different because it's a different website, but generally, I'm just using that analogy just so you guys can get the point across, right? So, don't make it harder than it has to be. A consumer is going to search for something that they want or that they like or they generally want to see. So in that notion alone, right, one of the things I don't want you to do when you're tagging is I don't want you to spam. Now that might sound obvious, right? But I'll explain why, because a lot of teachers on here don't actually do the explaining through the process. So I'll explain why. So when you spam, what you're really indicating to the algorithm is that you are indicating that your product relates to other things, and I'll explain. Here's a picture of a tiger. I see some Asian writing. I see some flowers. I see, whatever. So this is titled Tiger Greeting Card. Very simple, right? We look at some of the tags. It says Tiger, Chinese, Asian, Zodiac, Eastern Zodiac, Pinoy, Pinoys, flowers, brushwork, tigers, cats, big cats, stripes, China. Now, these are all general keywords, and I usually wouldn't recommend tagging like this for most beginners. However, in terms of the usage of the keywords, this person did not really spam. They didn't include keywords that they think might be successful. I'll give you an example. So, let's say people were looking through here and they see like Tiger Woods designs to be successful. If you have a picture of a tiger, don't start including keywords that just simply don't relate. And that's what I mean when I say don't spam. So that's the first thing. Do not spam by adding keywords that don't relate. Now, why is that? Now, I'll explain that. So when you spam and you add keywords that are not related to what you're actually selling, you're hurting your chances of success. You're increasing your view rate and your click rate, but you're decreasing your conversion rate, which is a huge problem. Now, I'll explain what those metrics mean and what they actually are and how this actually affects the Redbubble algorithm and actually negatively affects your situation, your scenario. So if you're a seller, right, and let's just say you use the example, let's type in the word beta fish. Let's use the word beta fish as an example, okay? If I'm selling designs of beta fish, it would not be wise to include the words goldfish or swordfish or electric eelfish in my tags. The reason why is because it just simply does not relate. Consumers who are searching for beta fish do not want to see photos of electric eels. They don't want to see photos of swordfish, right? If they did want to, they would simply search for these things. But I promise you, a lot of these beginners get caught up in that, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is we know that individuals get caught up in this, and this is actually very frequent, is by using the Redbubble tagging tool, the Redbubble Rocket tagging tool. So I'll just show you here the Redbubble Rocket tagging tool. For those who don't know, is a tool that you can use to let the tool find what is the most relevant keywords for a specific search term. Now, Redbubble has gotten better with this over time, but we see frequently that there are designs that show up in the most relevant section, right, of Redbubble that literally do not relate. Here's a perfect example. This jellyfish. This jellyfish is not a picture of a beta fish, but it does pop up. The reason why it pops up is it probably includes the word fish in its tags. Maybe includes the word beta, but I highly doubt it, but includes the word fish. And since it includes the word fish in the tags and it is included in our search, it is therefore related, but it ranks higher due to the sales and the number of favorites that it has. So it ranks higher. So it doesn't actually relate to the keyword beta fish, but yet it ranks in the beta fish community. Now, if we go ahead and use this Rocket Tagger tool to assess the tags, let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Click grab tags and let's wait for the results. Now, we have a whole bunch of different tags. Now, if we look here, there are going to be some tags that don't relate, yet people use these tags because they think they're going to be successful. Now, what the tool does here is the tool is capturing all the different tags that are related to the search term. So not related to these necessarily, but related to the search term. Now, how does that actually make a difference? Well, it makes a difference because the results are ever changing. These results can change in an hour. They can change in a day, a month, or even a year. they can change at any time, right? Now, that depends why they change. I mean, it could be sales. It could be the number of favorites that designs have. Things can be rearranged and changed. It's very possible, and it happens very frequently. But if you look here, there are certain keywords that relate and do not relate to the concept of beta fish. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these keywords. We have beta. We have the keyword fish. We have beta fish. We have aqua. We have beta. We have pet. Cute, buddy, ocean, fish tank, swim. Let's just use those. The word buddy does not relate to the concept of beta fish. But why do you think it shows up in like the top 10? Well, it means, and this is what how the tool works, is that the tool will scan all the different results, 2,650 results. And what it will do after scanning all these results is it will see that the word buddy is frequently used in all 2,650 results. And it stands out. So maybe we should include that, which is just goes to show how much of Redbubble is filled with people that really don't know how to tag. What they do is they go to somebody's account, let's just say it's this account or this profile, this product, and they look at the tags that are presented and they copy and paste those tags. Now that's good and that's bad, and that's going to cause a few issues here. The good thing is, well, you might potentially show up in the similar section over here. Now, why do I say that? Is because if you copied the exact same tags, you're going to show up sometimes here because, well, you're similar, right? Redbubble asserts values of certain designs based on the tags that they have and the relevancy that they acquire in relationship to other tags. But the reason why this is a bad thing is because you can actually be hurting yourself in the long term. Imagine if you created designs, and yes, you might be showing up in similar for certain photos, but imagine you're showing up in the similar section for other photos that don't relate whatsoever. Well, then in that case, you're hurting your long-term success because, once again, you're increasing your view rate, but you're decreasing your conversion rate. When you decrease your conversion rate, you rank lower for the keywords that you actually want to rank for. So what I would recommend every beginner to do is hop on the Redbubble Rocket Tagger tool. I think it's $8.99. Yeah, $8.99. It's on sale. It used to be $12.99. It's currently on sale. And it's $8.99 a month, so it's really nothing. And every single time you tag, and this is beginner advice. Obviously, we have separate advice for the people that purchase the course and that group of individuals. And we have, I think, over 30-something lessons. I think 34, 35 lessons in the Redbubble tag course. I'll leave the link in the description if you guys are interested. The course is $39.99. It's not for everybody, obviously. It's a Redbubble. It essentially takes you from absolute beginner, if you don't know anything about Redbubble, to advanced. It includes SEO, it includes tagging, things like that. But like I said, that's not beginner, it's advanced. But for the beginners watching this and beginner advice, hop on the tool, $8.99. It's cheap investment, and look at what the community is posting for certain designs. So, for example, let's just say I had 60 beta fish designs. If I have 60 beta fish designs, I'm going to want to assess what the community deems as valuable. And when I say the community, I mean all of these designs together, the amalgamation of tags presented. And then I'm going to want to value and assess my understanding by selectively picking certain tags. Now, this kind of poses for two features and two benefits. So if you look here, and I actually shouldn't do this. I'm not supposed to have two links open. But if you look here, when we run this tool, and I'll just do this just for a second here. I'll just give it a second here. And I grab these tags. You saw what those tags said. It said keywords like buddy. It said keywords like swim. If the tags don't relate, and I actually have to close the browser and open it back up again, but you get the point here. Let me actually see if I can paste them in my browser. Yep, I can paste them in my browser. You could see here, we have the keyword beta, we have the keyword fish, aqua, beta, pet, cute, buddy. You have to be smart with what kind of keywords you're adding. So for example, if you add the keyword buddy, then you have to understand that your design of beta fish is going to pop up for other concepts of the keyword buddy. So that could be two different scenarios. It could be somebody who's uploading keywords with the keyword buddy in it, or designs with the keyword buddy in it that happens to include the keyword fish. Or you could be really hurting your chances at the end of the day just to show up in the high levels for the keyword beta fish. So what I would do is, if I'm a beginner, once again, and I don't know the information I know now, I would open the tool and I would use it every single time I create designs. But before I use it, I would sit down and I would really study here, because my focus as a beginner is not to just constantly produce work. That's not my goal. And I really wouldn't recommend that for beginners. Actually, that's not true. I do recommend that for beginners. There's a time and place for that. But if you're a beginner to the point where you have really no logical experience with Redbubble, you have no sales to prove that you're advanced in any kind of way, you want to sit down, you want to start studying the game, right? And you want to sit down and every design you create, you want to have two lists. And you should do this, guys. Everybody should do this if you have low or no sales on Redbubble. You want to create your design, you want to have two lists. The first list is going to be your tags. You're going to add a list of your tags. Now, you can give yourself 5 to 10 seconds to add as many tags as you can. And then you want to have a second list. And the second list is using the tool to produce the list for you. So in our case, and we could just do this here, we could take this tag list or sample text, and I'll probably have to minimize it a little bit, but you can see here, this is a list of some of the tags that we received. And I'll just try to make this smaller. Let me go ahead and add this sample text here. Delete some of this sample text and paste here. Okay, you can see this huge list. I would put it here, and this list, I would go through every single tag, and I would delete the ones that don't matter. So, to me at least, the keyword buddy, the keyword ocean I probably wouldn't include, especially if I'm a beginner. Like I said, that's a slippery slope. The keyword pack I would not include. Sticker pack, really, I personally wouldn't include it unless it was matched with the keyword beta fish. So, and it's very rare that I would do that. There's only very specific circumstances where I'll do something like this, and we talk about that in the course. I'm not going to really talk about that here because it's not the time and the place. This is for beginners. This is not for advanced. But things like the keyword flask, Visco, I would get rid of. Hydro, I would get rid of because they don't really relate to my beta fish concept. Now, some people might sit here and say, well, by the end of this, I might end up with 15 tags, 12 tags, 20 tags, 5 tags. And what I want to recommend to every beginner watching this, because this is a beginner's guide, is don't be afraid to have a lower amount of tags. Now, I know this is not really what we talk about in the course, but when we talk about things in the course, we give you the necessary tools to acquire larger lists of tags. However, for the beginners watching this, it matters to understand that sometimes less is more. I don't want you to get into the habit, or the bad habit, I had to reiterate that, the bad habit of just adding meaningless keywords to your design. 9 times out of 10, if you're a beginner and you're really not sure if you should add a keyword or not, don't add it, because you're going to hurt yourself more than likely. Now, of course, there are certain times where, you maybe should have added a certain keyword that could have resulted in more sales and more traffic over time. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you this, and this is a fact, is that adding wrong keywords will hurt you much more than not adding the right ones, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, if I created a beta fish design and I only added one tag called beta fish, that might be more effective long-term than if I had included the keyword beta fish plus a bunch of other spammy words like aqua and mermaid and species and watercolor. That might be... actually, watercolor is not spam. It really just depends on the style of your design. But you guys get my point, hopefully, right? And what I would do, and this is my goal, is after I would create these two lists, over time, maybe over 100, 200, 500, maybe even 2,000 designs, I would want to compare and contrast my skills. I would want to look at how many of the tags am I creating by nature without using the tool, right? And remember, we're studying here. We're trying to study the game. Our goal is not to just produce aimlessly in the beginning, right? I would want to compare my results with the results of the machine. And the more tags that the machine is providing me, and the more I add them to my original list, that means the more work I have to do. So for example, if let's say I'm in my 10th design and this list produced, let's say, 5 really good tags. Well, that means I'm getting a little bit better. But let's say it produced 8 tags, 10 tags, 15 tags that I may have completely just missed here. Well, that means I have a lot more work to do. But the point with this is that on your 10th attempt, 5th attempt, whatever, that should be worse than your 1,000th attempt or your 500th attempt. Now, some people might not be familiar with my content, and they might just have a seizure when they hear me say 100 attempts, 500 attempts, 1,000 attempts, which brings me into one of the core concepts we talk about leading up to the course and the POD design course and many other courses that we talk about, which we believe that hard work and consistency produces results over time. And this is one of the biggest things that a lot of the people who just, and I'll be honest, don't like to work hard, don't like to hear. And the reality is when you're playing with Redbubble as a business, you have to understand that Redbubble was not created for artists. I know that might be a shock to some people, but Redbubble was created for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to make money. It was not created for artists. Artists tend to be, well, I know this might be stereotypical, but starving artists. And the reason why they're starving artists and they just don't make that much money is because they are more the visual of things. They're not really into the mathematical, scientifical, statistical, analytical side of things. Now, if you're an artist and you're on Redbubble, you're going to have to understand that it is a business, and you're going to have to do things on Redbubble that don't just include the creative. You're going to have to do your deep dive and deep studying on understanding algorithms, specifically the Redbubble algorithm. You're going to have to understand how keywords work. You're going to have to understand how the Redbubble treats particular keywords and the relationships to how keywords are associated with each other. All these things are very important. They can't be neglected if you want to truly be able to push forward and gain some sort of level of success with Redbubble. And the reason why I say that, guys, is because really when I have a lot of these students on the courses, a lot of them are creative artists that are just not sure how do they go about moving forward in a direction where they can actually get sales. They have the design aspect created and they have it down pat. And when I say the design aspect, for those who don't know, we created 2 different courses in the Redbubble space. We created the Redbubble print-on-demand design course, which is functional for a lot of different print-on-demand platforms. And then we have here the Redbubble tag course, which was specifically for the tagging, the SEO, the traffic acquisition. So to be clear, there were 2 main problems in the Redbubble space that I found. The first problem was this traffic. Like, a lot of people just had simply problems acquiring traffic. They might have 200 designs, 300 designs, but they're just not getting any visitors, any views. And I like to use a little analytics, and I like to say, if you're getting, let's just say, a half of a view for every single design created per day, you're really doing something wrong at that point. A good number is 1 view per design per day, which is not crazy to ask for, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you have 300 300 designs. Well, then you should be getting close to 300 visits a day on your account. That's not a hard ask. If you're not doing that, well, you should be getting at least 150. If you're not getting 150, in that case, with 300 designs 6 to 8 months into the game, something's wrong there. And once again, I say 6 to 8 months into the game because that's really when the SEO starts to kick in. Obviously, if you're 2 months into the game, then things are drastically different, and I don't want you to compare yourself to that. But that was one of the aspects. The other aspect was just the designs. There are some people who struggled with the designing side. How do I create 60 designs a day quickly that are different, that are attractive, and not just changing the color and calling it a different design? And I showed how to do that. But regardless, you have to essentially businessify your business, if that makes sense, or your print on demand or your Redbubble game. And it's not just being creative, pie in the sky, uploading art, 1 or 2 designs a day, and calling it a day. You're really going to have to look into the business side of things. And part of that is learning how to tag effectively, learning how to have a design strategy that is effective, and more importantly, it starts with just understanding how the algorithm works. That's the first step, right? That's the first step to moving into a positive direction. And the thing that's also important is that the Redbubble world or the Redbubble community, majority of the people are not successful. That's something to realize. And you have to really ask yourself why that is. Before you go on a rant and say, I hate Redbubble, and say, I quit, and this and that, you need to ask yourself, why are people not successful? It's because they're not treating it like a business, like we said earlier. They're not focusing on things like tags. They're not getting on tools that can help them succeed. They're not using different tools. They're not, and I'm not specifically saying the Redbubble Rocket Tagger tool, right? There's a whole bunch of different tools out there that you may or may not use. But I'm just saying that they're not treating it like a business, right? They're not focusing really, really hard on the analytics side. They're not taking a look at their Google Analytics, linking it to the Redbubble, and really studying what's happening with their traffic. They're just simply creating designs and hoping that it sells, right? So, and that's really not the way to go. So at the end of the day, I'll leave the link in the description to all the different things we mentioned, the courses, if you need them. Like I said, this was just a beginner's guide. The courses are not for everybody, and at the end of the day, that's really all I could say about the courses. They're just simply not for everybody. The tools, I'll leave the link in the description, but I really do think this tool is a great way as a beginner you can start just to get more ideas for different tags, different structures of different designs to create, and really it creates a good understanding of what keywords you don't want to use. Now, some may say, well, shouldn't I use those keywords that, even though they might seem a little spammy, shouldn't I use them in my tags? And the answer is no, because once again, at the end of the day, you need to keep your conversion rate in mind. If I use a certain keyword, for example, one of these spammy keywords, let's just pull one of these up. Like, let's go with, let's see here. Let's use the keyword mermaid, okay? And let's just assume that I show up for the keyword mermaid somewhere in the tags. If I show up in the similar section, somebody sees my design, that's counted as an impression. That impression is going to negatively affect my conversion rate if nobody ends up buying, okay? And nobody's going to end up buying for the keyword mermaid because it's a beta fish design. Since when do you see people searching for like a certain type of design and then buying another one? It generally doesn't happen, especially if they're in different niches. So what I want you to do is be niche specific. Don't include other keywords that don't relate. And like I said, it's a great tool for that, to just understand where people in your niche are going wrong. Now, this connects to the concept of dominating a niche, and I've spoken about this before. If you want to really dominate a niche, you pick a niche with a smaller amount of results, and you control the keyword outcomes in that niche. When you control the keyword outcomes and you are the overwhelming majority, when somebody comes around and uploads 5 to 10 to 20 spammy little designs, they're not going to show up high in the rank because you're the one who's controlling the relevancy behind that design. Now, that's a little bit more of an advanced concept. I don't want to throw anybody beginner off here, and really, you don't have to worry about it too much if you're a beginner. If you want to get a little more advanced, I highly recommend going to our free video playlist. You got so many free videos on Redbubble here on this YouTube channel where we prove certain things to be true and false. We show different things. You know, if you simply just need some inspiration, motivation, we got that too. Check it out, all right? I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out. Bye.